concern that Vladimir Putin is showing for the health and state of the United States. It's all quite remarkable. They are the sort of comments that you would hear or could hear from any die-hard Donald Trump supporter. And I know that the criminologists will pore over these remarks looking for deeper significance, but I think the core message here is that there is a message of support, a personal support from Vladimir Putin, the man, to Donald Trump, the man. Putin is reminding Donald Trump who his friends are.
OK, John, thank you very much. Let's go back to Hannah Thomas-Peter, who's in Washington for us. Hannah, technology failed us, but here we are again. You were saying impeachment a long way off, but it is being mentioned.
It is, and a significant moment when the first Democrat to speak about it publicly made that call on the floor of the House. It is significant because we're not just talking about small proceedings here. We're talking about removing a president from office. It would be a wrenching process for this country. So it's a big moment for a politician of any political persuasion to make that public call. But the reason he's even in a position to talk about impeachment is because of these swirling scandals that Trump, according to memos written by James Comey, the former FBI director, attempted, apparently, according to these memos, to influence the course of an active FBI investigation, then subsequently fired the FBI director who was the man in charge of investigating whether Trump's campaign colluded with Russia to swing the election. And Trump's real detractors are also saying, well, we could remove this man from office because he's endangering national security. Don't forget the scandal that blew up 48 hours ago, which was that Donald Trump appeared to share sensitive information with senior Russian officials, something that he hasn't denied, nor has that been denied by his senior surrogates. So Donald Trump is on very thin ice at the moment, politically, absolutely, and he's just about to, he's got to keep governing. He's got to try and deliver on all these promises he made during the campaign, and he can't do it. He's about to go on this foreign trip to Saudi Arabia, in Israel and Italy and the Vatican, and these scandals are following him, making his job and his ability to appease his base very difficult indeed.
Hannah, thank you. Yes, President Trump fighting fires on numerous fronts at the moment. We are expecting to hear from the President a little bit later. We'll bring you as much of that as we can. He is making a speech. Now, to more domestic matters. The Liberal Democrats have launched their general election manifesto with a pledge to hold a second referendum on EU membership. The Lib Dem leader Tim Farron says that a bad deal would wreck the future of our children.
The centre point of our manifesto is offering the British people some hope. The reality is that we are giving the people of this country the chance to decide on what comes next with Brexit. And if that deal that Theresa May comes back with is not good enough for you and your family, you should have the right to reject it and to vote to remain. There are too many people, we know Jeremy Corbyn, trooped through the lobbies with Theresa May and UKIP to enact the most extreme version of Brexit. And in this election, people need and deserve a choice that isn't that extreme Brexit, that gives you the final choice on what future you will have for you and your family.
Well, Sky's Siobhan Robbins has been following the Lib Dem campaign so far, joins us live from East London. Siobhan, welcome to you. First of all, Labour were criticised for not having much about Brexit in their manifesto. The Lib Dems have certainly not done that, have they?
Yes, that's right. This is definitely a manifesto built around Brexit. Before we get on to that, let me show you around, because we're actually in East London. This is where the speech tonight, the official launch of the manifesto will be taking place. You can see behind me, this is the stage where Tim Farron's going to give his speech. His mic packs already here on the lectern there, Change Britain's Future. And that is exactly what is also on the front of this manifesto, Change Britain's Future. So what's inside it, you may ask? Well, lots of the detail we've already been giving you over the last few weeks. Of course, there's a cash pledge for the NHS, 30 billion over 5 years paid for with a 1% tax rise across the board. Money for schools, 7 billion, pumping money into infrastructure, more for railways, pledges to build hundreds of thousands of new houses as well. And then, of course, environmental pledges, which you would expect from the Liberal Democrats, for example, charging for people to use disposable coffee cups. But at the centre of all of this, as you said, is Brexit. And have a look on this stage. So you've got here the Union flag, but then in the centre there, the EU flag. And that's because from the very start, the first words in this manifesto are all about Brexit. They say that they want to offer people a second vote on the referendum. They claim that there was the referendum vote last year, but we didn't know what the deal was. And once that deal's hammered out, that people in the UK should get a chance to talk about it. The problem is, it's quite a dicey move because there are parts of London, for example, which support the Liberal Democrats that voted strongly in the Remain. That might play well to those voters. But then in other swathes of previously Liberal Democrat heartlands like the South West, where there was a huge Leave vote, people might find this really difficult. But Tim Farron is sticking by his guns. He's saying that Brexit is central to their manifesto.
And Siobhan, one of the eye-catching things today is the pledge that the Lib Dems are making about cannabis. Tell us more.
Yes, so we first spoke about this on Sky News last Friday, but essentially this is an idea by the Liberal Democrats to legalise cannabis and to sell it in a regulated way on the high street, and then they'll tax the profits from that. They say the reason they're doing that is because at the moment the potency of the cannabis that's being sold isn't regulated, that it's dangerous for users, and it's actually better to have a more regulated and licensed way of selling that could be controlled by the government. Here's Tim Farron.
Whatever money drugs raise at the moment goes into the pockets of the criminal gangs. And the principal objective, two objectives of our policy, which is based almost identically on the scheme that Canada will introduce across its country this year, is to minimise harm and indeed to make sure that we take back control from the criminal gangs.
So another possibly divisive policy, although certainly some people who've been using cannabis illegally because of medical issues like MS told me last week that they were really happy about this policy. But the point is, with Brexit at the centre of the manifesto, is this going to be a tactic which actually undoes the Liberal Democrats in the future?
Siobhan, thank you. Meanwhile, Theresa May has ripped into Labour's manifesto pledges, saying that they would cause economic chaos for families across Britain. A bit earlier, she appeared with her Chancellor, Philip Hammond, insisting that Jeremy Corbyn cannot provide the leadership that the UK needs.
Any party which asks the British people to entrust to them the responsibilities of forming the next government through the crucial years of our Brexit negotiations and beyond must demonstrate that it has the credible economic plan and the capable team to safeguard our economic security. No one could look at what Jeremy Corbyn and his Labour Party offered yesterday and conclude that it passed the test. The risk which a Jeremy Corbyn-led government would pose to our economy has been laid bare.
In response to that, Labour has strongly rejected the Conservatives' claims about their maths, and the Shadow Chancellor John McDonnell has issued this challenge to his Tory counterpart, Philip Hammond.
He's talking rubbish about our manifesto and our costings this morning, so I want to challenge him to a televised debate. Draw him out. If he's confident about his figures, come and debate them with me. Whenever he wants, whatever time he wants. That's the challenge to the Tories.
Well, let's speak to our chief political correspondent, John Craig. John, the war of words continues between Labour and the Tories, but Theresa May's even had some criticism from a former cabinet colleague as well today.
Yes, she's been caused some grief today, both really by her current Chancellor and her past Chancellor, or rather David Cameron's former Chancellor, George Osborne. Now, the problem with that news conference they had this morning was that they didn't really have a story to tell apart from Labour bashing. They produced this dossier, The Cost of Corbyn, but inevitably there were questions about Mr Hammond's future. She said she was happy to endorse him, but she declined to say if he'd still be there after the election. He said, I'm not going to say I've never occasionally sworn, when he was asked about rows with Number 10. So they've stoked up that story again. Then, of course, we've learned about a gaffe by Boris Johnson where he insulted a Sikh voter talking about whiskey tariffs in a Sikh temple. But George Osborne, now editor of the Evening Standard, has absolutely ripped into Theresa May's pledge to reduce immigration to the tens of thousands. Now, he became editor of the Evening Standard earlier this month. In today's editorial, published this afternoon, he says this about immigration and Theresa May's pledge. The editorial says it remains a mystery why the Prime Minister has recommitted her party to introduce net migration to the tens of thousands a year. She didn't need to make this politically rash and economically illiterate move. She was not the author of the pledge. David Cameron made it in opposition. And the editorial continues, so you'd assume that Mrs May would jump at the chance to bury the pledge. That's what her cabinet assumed. None of its senior members supports the pledge in private, and all would be glad to see the back of something that has caused the Conservative Party such public grief. But no, Mrs May has kept digging. Ouch. Pretty painful that. No wonder some people are already talking about today being a wobbly Wednesday. All on the eve of the Tory manifesto launch. So even before she's asked about the contents of that, the PM's going to presumably be asked tomorrow about relations with her Chancellor, whether Boris Johnson is suitable to carry on as Foreign Secretary, and now the criticism from the former Chancellor of her flagship immigration policy.
Quite the to-do list. John, thank you. Sky will be hosting, by the way, a live Q&A with Theresa May and Jeremy Corbyn. It's May v Corbyn live, the battle for number 10. And you can see it on Bank Holiday Monday, that's the 29th of May. If you want to be in the audience, by the way, with the chance to ask a question to the leaders, go to our website or our mobile app now and click on the link to participate. Some developing news for you now. Lawyers